Eric Jackson met with the team at Opendoor this week, and it's giving some energy to the Bulls. We'll break down that story, including everything we've seen so far with Opendoor and where we could be headed the remainder of the week. We'll also break down some listener favorites, including BitMine, Immersion Technologies, and some of the recent news around that particular company. We'll also tackle some of the bigger macro news, including Alphabet, the parent company for Google, hitting an all-time high of 9% on Wednesday, and how Trump's tariffs could be affecting the bond market. We'll break down all that and much more on this week's Midweek Check-In. As always, if you get value from these videos, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, folks, let's roll. Welcome back to Stonkcast, the market show for the average Joe. Whether you're a diamond-handed degenerate looking for the next 500% play, or a more conservative swing trader or investor, we've got you covered. If you'd like to support the channel, make sure to check the links in the description. All right, folks, we're back again for a midweek check-in, first week of September. And of course, we're going to kick it off with Opendoor Technologies, the #1 retail stock in the world, according to Eric Jackson. And speaking of Eric Jackson, we got some interesting news that came out on Tuesday after the long Labor Day weekend that he was in fact in California at headquarters meeting with the team. Very interesting. So let's kick it off with that news. Here's the tweet from Eric Jackson himself. Day 14, San Francisco, live outside Opendoor headquarters this morning. No signs of the open army yet, maybe later. Pumped to meet with folks from the company, plus other exciting meetings here. And Drake, if you ever need a comfy bed in San Francisco, the Hyatt's got you covered. So pretty funny shout out there to Drake. For those who've been following this story for some time now, Eric Jackson, of course, has been posted up outside of Drake's house every day, trying to get him to purchase Opendoor. But the bigger story here, folks, is Eric Jackson at headquarters. And of course, all the speculation around what this may or may not mean is massive. Let's not forget the fact, first of all, that the retail community around Opendoor has already done a ton. I mean, you have Anthony Pompliano talking about all the recommendations the retail community has sent in, right? You also have Carrie Wheeler, who got pushed out because of the retail interest in this company. And now, given all the frenzy around Opendoor that's been driven by this hive mind, if you will, right, of the retail community, this decentralized hedge fund, if you will, you now have Eric Jackson meeting with the team. So in my opinion, this is pretty significant news. And of course, we don't know what came out of that meeting as of yet. Eric Jackson did tweet out later on in the day after that meeting to basically hold tight and that he would be sending a follow-up soon. So we don't know what happened during that meeting. Did they put Eric Jackson on the board? Is that maybe what's in the works right now? Is that why he hasn't said anything yet? It's all very, very interesting. But the fact that they brought Eric Jackson in, the champion of this entire movement, the one who's been putting in, I would argue, the most work around Opendoor, is very, very interesting. So Eric Jackson has been obviously very bullish on Opendoor. And look, this is a major, major step for this entire movement. You know, if you think back to AMC and GameStop, right? You didn't have this type of thing happening. You didn't have people from, investment funds getting brought into headquarters, right? To essentially give their 2 cents as to what direction the company should go. And that's essentially what we're getting right now with Opendoor. We continue to see the evolution of the retail investor, in my opinion. This was another tweet from Eric Jackson. He said, I told them today what I've said here. When I came up with my open $82 target, that was for 2028. But I truly believe the stock is now the leading cult stock in tech. And if they make the right choices in the next few weeks with the CEO and the board, I don't see why this can't be an $82 stock by Christmas. So very, very interesting stuff there. Obviously, that's going to make the bulls happy. And, it's a pretty intense price target of $82, right? Some people kind of laugh at that. But clearly, Eric Jackson is very confident in that price target. And clearly, there are a lot of independent retail investors across the country and across the globe that agree with Eric Jackson. Hence the reason we've seen such a frenzy of retail action in Opendoor over the past month. So we will see what happens with any updates from Eric Jackson regarding what the board is doing, why they brought him in. Do they have any ideas on who the next CEO is going to be? Is that part of the reason why they brought Eric Jackson in? All we can do at this point is obviously speculate, but I would expect Eric Jackson to fill us in, as he always does, and give us some more news soon. So very excited about that personally. All right, let's jump into the chart on Opendoor. So we've had a very interesting couple of days in this stock. And if we just first of all take a look at the daily chart, right, for Opendoor, you can see here for those on YouTube, I have this basically bull flag, bull pennant, whatever you want to call it, drawn out that really started back on August 26th. And the interesting thing is that we broke out of that, folks, on Tuesday, technically. We got a push up above this descending level of resistance. And then on Wednesday, we managed to basically hold that. We did technically have a red day on Wednesday, if you're just looking at the daily candle from that angle, but we were up 4 cents on the day. And basically what I saw very promising is the fact that we held this 15% green day that we had on Tuesday. One of the things I've noticed with Opendoor is the fact that, when you're coming out of weekends, the long weekends in particular, you get some bullish action because you have people over the weekend hyping the stock up, things like that. So that's what we're looking at right now. We are above the 23% Fibonacci retracement level, which is fantastic. That's that 460 level. And on the RSI, we're currently sitting at 68. So we're not technically overbought yet. So we still have room to the upside. And if we drill down into a 10-day, 30-minute chart here for those on YouTube, this is just beautiful price action that we saw on Tuesday after the long weekend. We came up, we tested, first of all, the lower end of that bull flag, came up, tested the top end, came back down about halfway, and then we reclaimed it. That is a nice bullish recovery there that happened intraday on Tuesday, broke out of the bull flag, and ended the day up again about 15%. Great to see that. And then on Wednesday in pre-market, we got as high as 545. Now, keep in mind, the 52-week high is not that far off from that, 585 roughly. So we were about 40 cents off from a new 52-week high pre-market on Wednesday. And we just basically hit a supply zone here, right around that 530 range. And even though we did trend down, we managed to reclaim some of that into the close on Wednesday, closing at 513. But really the promising thing that I saw on Opendoor is the fact that if you take a look at these 30-minute candles in particular right here, folks, see these wicks right here? This shows buyers stepping in. The fact that we crossed below $5, which is a psychological level, got down as low as $4.92 late in the afternoon on Wednesday. You would think if you were short this stock, you would think if 5 breaks, there's a good chance this thing is going to retest 460. But the bull stepped in, and this acted as basically a mini bear trap, if you will, enticing shorts, enticing bears to get in, breaking below 5. But then the bulls bought it right back up, and we closed at 513. So that shows a lot of buying pressure, a lot of demand right around that $5 psychological level. And we very well could be establishing a new floor for Opendoor, which in my opinion would be $5. We'll see if this holds obviously through the remainder of the week, Thursday and Friday, but I thought that was very significant. Let's do a quick check-in on the options chain for Opendoor. Taking a look at what we saw on Wednesday's price action, another insane put-to-call ratio of 0.28, insanely bullish options chain. You had just over 500,000 calls transacted versus only 151,000 puts. And we take a look at the IV percentile, 42% has come off a bit. Again, seeing that IV percentile below 50% makes it more attractive to be a buyer of premium, and makes it more attractive for, the bulls and any investors looking to, express their, opinion on what direction this stock is going to go through the options market, because the implied volatility is kind of cooled off a bit. So 42% for the IV percentile is great to see. And actually right now, if we take a look at the current historical volatility percentile, 72%. So 72% of the time it's lower than what it currently is. So obviously we've seen a lot of recent volatility in Opendoor over the past month, so that makes sense. But the current implied volatility percentile, 42% of the time it's lower than it currently is. It's basically a coin flip right now. So, it's in a good spot in my opinion. If we take a look at the September 5th weekly expiration, let's take a look at some of this open interest here to see what we're looking at. You got 46,675 contracts, open interest sitting at the $6 strike. That's massive. On Wednesday, you had 60,000 in volume just on that strike alone. If we continue to push up, reclaim 550, push closer to 6, you're going to see the deltas grow significantly on these $6 contracts. Right now, the delta is at 17, but the gamma is 35. Basically, for those who don't know, that's just simply saying the gamma is how much the delta will change, right, for every dollar the stock moves up. So if we get a dollar move up in Opendoor, all of a sudden the delta is going to jump 17 plus 34. Obviously, these are fluid and constantly changing, but all you need to know is that as we get closer to $6 this week, which I believe we will get above $6 this week, those contracts become more valuable. Those are more shares market makers need to buy. So that's the options chain right now on Opendoor, looking very, very interesting. And if we just do a quick check-in on, basically where we're sitting right now from an institutional standpoint, no recent 13G or F filings. I've seen some things floating around that Citadel added some of their position to Opendoor. I haven't been able to confirm that just yet, but maybe do your own due diligence on that. But nevertheless, if you've been following the show for a while, you know that we've been covering a lot of major institutions buying into Opendoor. Square Point was a recent one on August 27th, buying up 1.4 million shares. So, there are a lot of big investors in this company. And right now, according to Fentel.io, institutional ownership is sitting at just over 48% on Opendoor. So very interesting indeed. And as far as what we're looking at for Thursday and Friday, I'm expecting, again, that we break that $6 level. I think we are just waiting on news to drop right now on Opendoor. And I don't really have a lot of reason to believe this other than just simply intuition, I guess, if you want to call it that. But I believe we are very close to getting some significant news on Opendoor, whether it's Eric Jackson joining the board or a new CEO being announced. I get the feeling, right? So take that for what it's worth. I would expect some news like that to drop closer to the weekend, if at all. So I would expect maybe Friday, or maybe next Friday, like Eric Jackson said in his tweet, maybe over the next couple of weeks. But I think we are on the verge of news soon. And honestly, in my opinion, the company would do well to drop some news, because basically not dropping any news with all this retail interest right now really feels like wasted opportunity. And, people are going to move on. People are going to get bored if things don't start to change. So I will definitely be paying attention to that. Let me know in the comments if you are involved in this play, if you got options, shares, what your take is on the price action. Are we going to get to $82 like Eric Jackson thinks? Let me know what you think. Now let's move on to some, basically we're just going to review some of the major indices and also some of the tickers that you, being the listeners, have sent in to me, dropping in the comments. Definitely appreciate that. So first of all, let's take a look at the S&P 500 and see basically, how we've been doing this week. Obviously, we had the long Labor Day weekend. And really on Monday, on Tuesday, we had a gap down on the S&P 500. And we'll get into some of the reasons for that related to President Trump and his tariffs. But we had a gap down on Monday, but the bulls did manage to reclaim it. A very nice, bullish candle there, doji, shooting star doji, if you want to call it that. And then basically the same thing happening on Wednesday. So we closed the gap, and really from a probability standpoint, if you were playing options on the S&P 500, the best thing you could have done on this in this scenario, right, with a Tuesday gap down, there's a high probability, folks, that this gap gets filled. And look what happened on Wednesday. The gap got filled. So as soon as the bell, went ding on Tuesday morning and we had that gap down at open, that would have been prime time to buy some calls, since there is a high probability of this gap fill happening. That's just one of the things you can pay attention to. We saw the same thing happen a few weeks back right here. All right, so S&P currently sitting at 64.48, not that far off all-time highs. I'm looking for a reclaim of 64.67, this Fibonacci level right here. Quick check-in on the tech-heavy NASDAQ via the Qs. Had a gap down on there, and that also managed to get filled as well on Wednesday. You got the all-time high at 583 there. Quick check-in on IWM, small caps, holding up a little bit better than, I would argue Qs or, the SPY did as far as the gap down. It wasn't as significant. Actually, I don't even think there was a gap on IWM on Tuesday. So, holding up pretty well there. Currently sitting at 233 on IWM. And then if we do a quick check-in on the VIX right now is currently sitting at 16. So it did come up quite a bit on Tuesday when we had the gap down on the market. Almost got to 20, hit about 19.39, and has come off a bit since then, currently sitting at 16.35. Let's do a quick check-in on Bitcoin on TradingView here. If you're interested in TradingView, make sure to check the links in the description. Get $15 off using our link. At time of recording, however, Bitcoin is basically flat. We're sitting at 111,755. It's also come off a bit from the new all-time high that it made at 124,000 back on August 15th. But over the past couple days, it looks like it's starting to get a floor going on here. And it looks like new support for Bitcoin short-term right around 108,000. So that's what we got on the major indices. And now what I want to do is just briefly go through some of the various companies, various tickers that, listeners dropped comments on YouTube for that they wanted me to, check out. So just going to run through a couple of those here. And first of all, what I want to do is just give a brief overview of the 4 companies that we're going to be covering. Shout out to ChatGPT for this rundown here. But first of all, SoundHound AI. Ticker symbol SOUN. What they do, voice AI specialists offering conversational platforms across industries, automotive, restaurant, customer service, and more. Very high short interest, 32%, very, very high. Second one here is going to be Alt 5 Sigma, ticker symbol ALTS. This is a small cap tech company focused on fintech and biotech, powered by blockchain technologies. And this is an interesting one because of the fact that you have Eric Trump now involved with this company. So some integration happening there on the crypto side with Alt 5 Sigma. You had the World Financial coin that got released recently. So that's an interesting one. One that a lot of people ask me about here, Bitmine Immersion, BMNR. This is a blockchain firm that shifted from Bitcoin mining to building a massive Ethereum treasury, largest institutional holder globally of Ethereum. This is very, very interesting, and had some, recent individuals, well-known investors that got involved in the company, which I'll cover here shortly. And you also got Tom Lee kind of heading up Bitmine Immersion, and Tom Lee knows his stuff. Another one here, Hims and Hers Health. This is another highly shorted company. This is telehealth. A lot of people know what they do. Direct-to-consumer health and wellness brand offering prescriptions, mental health services, and personal care products, right? So let's just quickly run through some of the charts here for these various companies. I'll kick it off with Hims and Hers. The interesting thing about Hims and Hers, right? It's highly, highly shorted, about 30%. And when I was taking a look at this yesterday, the interesting thing to me about Hims is that we are basically in a position right now where we are right around the 200-day moving average on this. And I believe it actually bounced off of that 200-day moving average on Wednesday. And if we take a look here, you can clearly see this is the 200-day moving average. I took a look at this Tuesday evening and was thinking, wow, that'd be a great buy opportunity. And sure enough, it was. Unfortunately, I didn't play it. Hopefully you did. But it was up 7% on Wednesday. Got to bounce off that 200-day moving average. Currently running into the 20-day moving average. And from a Fibonacci retracement level, you can see here, it's kind of coiled around the 50% Fibonacci level. But this is a highly shorted stock. It's highly volatile. I mean, just look at this movement back here at the beginning of the year. You had a run up from 24 to 72 because it's highly shorted, right? So definitely want to keep on your radar. I'm not necessarily playing it right now personally. Had a put to call ratio on Wednesday of 0.43, but one to pay attention to. Let's move on to Alt 5 Sigma. This one right now got wrecked over the past couple days. You had, like I said, you got Eric Trump getting involved in this company, and they basically released the World Liberty Financial Token a couple days ago. And after the initial release of it, it basically crashed. And Alt 5 Sigma bought up a stake in that. That's what caused Eric Trump to basically come on board for Alt 5 Sigma. But you can see the fact that they have that on their balance sheet and the token is not doing too well is impacting, the company right now, at least as far as the stock price goes. And you can see this jump in volume that's been wild. Started August 12th. You've seen a ton of liquidity happening right now in this. But just my 2 cents on this, it is now below the 200-day moving average. And about to test out the 61% Fibonacci level. If it breaks that, you could see this thing go as low as 350 in my opinion, maybe closer to 350 to 4 is really what I'd be looking at next. But it's not one that I am personally touching right now, but nevertheless, it is a very interesting company and interesting storyline. All right, let's move on to SOUN. Out of all the charts, folks, this is probably the most beautiful one I have seen. Again, highly shorted stock, but if we take a look at the daily chart here, look at this grind up as it's been using this dynamic support of the 200-day moving average really since about February. It's just been kind of riding this up very slowly, very, very gradually. And then you had the spike up to 16 not that long ago. We found some support at the 61% retracement level, which is usually a deep retracement, usually good probability of a bounce happening there. And as of right now, we're sitting at $12.74 on this. But again, this is highly shorted. I like it as an AI play, and it is one that I would be looking at personally for some longer dated calls. I do believe we can get back to $24. As far as the options chain on this one, insanely bullish, put to call ratio 0.26 sitting on that one. And then last but not least, Bitmine Immersion. This one's very interesting. I'll get into the chart in a second, but I just want to cover some news on it. This from TipRanks. Bitmine Immersion releases investor presentation update. So on September 2nd, Bitmine Immersion announced the release of an investor presentation and a video update for its stockholders aimed at providing insights into the company's business and operations. The strategic communication effort is intended to enhance investor relations and keep stakeholders informed. So they came out with that, and I've seen some sites basically saying that, like this one, for example, the most recent analyst rating on BMNR stock is a buy with a $60 price target. That's pretty interesting. They had a major investor that stepped into this company not that long ago, Peter Thiel. For those who may not know who he is, he's basically a billionaire entrepreneur, investor, and political activist. He was the co-founder of, he co-founded PayPal and Palantir Technologies. That's a pretty big one. So a pretty notable investor here. And according to this article from CNBC, this was back in mid-July, but he just bought a big stake in Tom Lee's Ether company, and the shares are surging. So he is a big investor that hopped into this play. And if we take a look at this piece from Yahoo Finance, Bitmine boosts Ethereum stash above $8 billion, now holds 1.5% of Ethereum supply. So BitMine Immersion Technologies recently purchased 153,000 Ethereum, taking a $655 million step toward its goal of owning 5% of the asset supply, according to a press release. The Las Vegas-based firm now owns roughly 1.86 million Ethereum, worth $8.1 billion. The company, which initiated its Ethereum treasury strategy in late June, currently owns 1.5% of the 120.7 million Ethereum in existence, according to crypto data provider CoinGecko. So this is very interesting, and you got Tom Lee, as I was saying, involved in this company, which is very interesting to me as well, something I honestly didn't know before looking into this. In a video shared on Monday, Fundstrat co-founder Tom Lee, who serves as chair of BitMine's board, said Ethereum is in the midst of having a 1971 moment. That year, the U.S. government moved away from the gold standard, making the greenback synthetic, he said. So this is interesting. They're betting big on Ethereum, and I've actually heard Tom Lee himself say that he thinks there's basically a 50-50 chance that Ethereum could pass Bitcoin, which is a pretty hot take. So drop a comment. Let me know if you agree or disagree with Tom Lee on that. But nevertheless, BMNR, the ticker, BitMine Immersion, definitely one to keep on your radar. Currently trading at $44. Again, analyst ratings, for what it's worth, have a price target of $60 currently on this. As of right now, just taking a look at the chart on it, we're currently trading at $44, and we basically come off the high, recent high of $72 that was back on August 13th. So really what I'd be looking for on this personally is a reclaim of the psychological level of $50, but this could be a very interesting play for the long haul in the crypto space. So that's what we got on some of these tickers. Let me know if you are currently involved in any of these, or if you have any other companies or stock tickers, right, that you want me to break down. Would love to do that. The markets are my passion. I love doing this stuff. So please make sure to drop a comment and let me know what your take is. If you're getting involved in BitMine or SoundHound, that's probably my favorite one right now, just due to the short interest in how the chart looks. Hims and Hers is also interesting. They've had some class action lawsuits that look like they're going to get dropped, so we could see a pump on that. And there are a lot of big investors in that as well, such as Vanguard, right? And I believe BlackRock. So you got some big companies involved in Hims and Hers, just like you got big companies involved in Opendoor. So very interesting stuff there indeed. All right, let's move on to some macro news. Let's kick it off, first of all, with this article from Barron's. Alphabet stock hits an all-time high. Google avoided the worst in its antitrust case. Shares of Google parent Alphabet soared to new highs after the federal district court judge in the U.S. government's case against Google released a seemingly limited set of remedies to mitigate the tech giant's monopoly on internet search. Among his rulings, U.S. District Judge Amit Mehta said on Tuesday that the search giant wouldn't have to sell its Chrome web browser. In a closely watched part of the case, Google also won't be barred from paying Apple to make Google the default search provider on its devices. The court said it could still revisit that part of the ruling. Google also won't be prevented from making payments to distribution partners for preloading Google Search, Chrome, or its Gen AI products. Google will, however, be barred from entering exclusive contracts that relate to distribution of Google Search, Chrome, Google Assistant, and the Gemini app, the ruling added. So very interesting, and really a big win for, again, Alphabet, the parent company of Google here. There were some concerns in the past with, basically how this company might need to be broken up. And so the fact that they had a big win here is obviously massive, and we see it reflected in the stock. I mean, goodness gracious, look at this jump on Google. You basically went from 205, gapped all the way up to 274 on Wednesday. For a Magnificent Seven stock such as Google, this is a massive move to the upside. If anybody had calls on Tuesday or last week that they swung, I mean, you are sitting pretty. I actually saw a post from Wall Street Bets about a guy who turned something like 10,000 into something like 1.5 million just by simply buying 5% out of the money call options on Google since the April lows. Very, very impressive. But Google right now looking incredible. New all-time high again, currently sitting at 231. I will be keeping tabs on this and probably putting some Fibonacci extension levels on this to see what are some future price targets we could be looking at for Google. But as of right now, looking pretty good and definitely helped prop up the S&P 500 and really the overall market on Wednesday. So interesting stuff. Let's move on to this piece from Barron's. How an appeals court's ruling on Trump tariffs could upend the bond market. The future of President Donald Trump's trade policy is in question after an appeals court late Friday upheld a previous court's ruling, which found that a significant portion of the president's tariffs are illegal. The uncertainty could lead to more volatility in the bond market and potentially push longer-term Treasury yields higher. The U.S. government brought in $28 billion from tariffs in July. Investors have been banking on this steady stream of revenue to keep coming in, the money that could help reduce the budget deficit of $1.6 trillion. The ruling, which Trump dubbed an incorrect decision by a, quote, highly partisan appeals court in a Truth Social post, said that the tariffs will remain in effect until mid-October, but any disruption to tariff payments after that could have a negative impact on bond yields. So this is very, very interesting, and we basically saw this impact the market on Tuesday. So this information came out, over the weekend on Friday, Labor Day weekend. But again, if we take a look at the S&P 500, the overall market took a hit on Tuesday's open because you have a lot of, money flowing out of bonds after the Labor Day weekend based off of this news regarding tariffs, right? So that was the interesting news that we got there. And really, we'll see what happens in the weeks ahead. But as of right now, that's what we are looking at there. Let's move on to the economic calendar. All right. So first of all, I want to take a look here at what we've seen thus far this week. So we had ISM manufacturing. We had PMI that came out, right? Numbers were not that great, folks. And then we also had the JOLTS job openings that came out on Wednesday morning. Those were also not that great. As far as Thursday, we're going to get ADP non-farm employment change, initial jobless claims, some PMI information, right? We're going to get some more good looks at the job market. And as of right now, it looks weak. And we see that reflected in the CME Group website. Right now, we got about a 96% chance of a 25 basis point cut happening. So as of right now, we're basically baking in a rate cut for the month of September. That's going to be great for Opendoor. And as long as the job market continues to show signs of weakness, that's going to be the case. So that's what we got coming out Thursday, Friday. We're going to get non-farm payrolls and employment rate for August coming out there. All right, quick check-in on the earnings calendar via Earnings Hub. So we had an interesting one, a pretty popular one, a recent IPO that came out on Wednesday after the bell. Figma reported earnings, and unfortunately, their earnings per share estimate of 8 cents was not something that they actually obtained. They actually got nothing, came in with 0. So that's not great, and they definitely took a hit based off of that. Thursday after the close, you're going to get AVGO, Lululemon. That's about it, though. Not a ton happening as far as earnings for this week. And then, for the market prep video coming out on Sunday, we'll, of course, cover some of the bigger earnings that will be happening next week. Oracle is going to be a big one. GameStop, for all my GameStop people out there, that's coming out as well. So we'll cover some more of that on the market prep video. All right, so that's what we got for this midweek check-in. Listen, we got a couple days left, on the market prep video this past Sunday. I called out $6 on Opendoor. I still think we're going to break $6 this week. Let's see what happens. We got 2 more trading days. We got the shortened trading week, but I love the energy around the company right now. I love that Eric Jackson's meeting with the board, and let's see what comes of it. So drop a comment. Let me know what you think about that meeting that happened between Eric Jackson and Opendoor, if anything's going to come from that. Also, let me know what you think about Alphabet and, if they're going to continue to another new all-time high after what we saw on Wednesday. And let me know what you think about President Trump and his tariffs and this appeals court decision, how that may impact things in the future. Are we on the cusp of a bit of a breakdown in the market due to that? Do you think it's going to get resolved? Would love to get your take on it. Definitely appreciate all the support. Make sure to check the links in the description. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a rating for us. Make sure to follow the show. Definitely appreciate it. Like and subscribe. Share with a buddy. We will be back on Sunday for the market prep video. And as always, folks, remember, plan the trade and trade the plan. Have a good one.